And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome to another round of Culturally Conscious Communications here on the LIV Radio, LIV TV here on livinginblack.com. My name is Kidi Owadu, aka The Conscious Rasta. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT, and 8 p.m. East Africa time. We get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives. We deal with entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Friday. It is the 16th day of May 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we realign our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. Welcome to Show Me the Money with Dr. Steph, and Kidi Owadu was in the house. Hey, Doc, how you doing today?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I feel good. I feel a little hectic. I was just in the kitchen. We have some guests coming in from London, and just was preparing some living super food for our guests. You know about living super food.
You know I do, and I love that. That's fabulous. Absolutely. Well, I'm coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya, so you forgot that time zone. It's 7 o'clock for me.
Oh, my apology for that. Yeah, it's 7 o'clock. You know, the time
No
zone
worries.
shift throws us off because they do not acknowledge the Western time code shift. And 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, it always throws me off at this time.
Listen, I didn't know. I had to look on my phone because we were laughing, me and someone else earlier, about trying to coordinate some conversations, like on what time zone, and I'm like, listen, I don't trust my calendars anymore because they keep adjusting to different zones. The Jamaican time zone is wrong because they don't adjust, to celebrate these times. So it's just a mess.
Well, the Jamaican time is right because they don't adjust. Our time in this country is wrong. But then again, they say, as America goes, so must go the rest of the world.
Sure. So as usual, I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so glad you sent the reminder because it wasn't on my calendar. See,
that's right.
And that's why I said there's a problem. I don't know where it is on my calendar.
A problem. And what we do around here is we do the best we can to give the people the tools to solve their problems. There is a problem among the African American, and this would expand to other communities around the world as well. And that is the problem of 100 years from now, we don't have a plan for wealth. Today on LIV Radio, family sovereignty typically refers to the idea that families should have the authority and autonomy to make decisions regarding their own lives, values, and upbringing of children without undue interference from external entities. And also, this concept expands and extends to what are we going to be doing 100 years from now insofar as family wealth? Talk to us why you picked this very important topic today, Doc.
Well, it ended up that I traveled to Nairobi for the purpose of some business investments and dealing with some families who had some interest in some of the projects that I'm leading. And so that was the initiative to, go ahead and make the trek. And as I came and started to not only, can you hear me? Uh-oh, do we have a delay? I hope not. So as I arrived and met with this family and the process of looking at their plans, it became apparent that there were not just, a single family in need of this type of planning and strategy, but that there are actually multiple families that need to have a family plan and a way to plan out their legacies. And so I suggested that we look at this in the context of, let's put together a solid 100-year family plan. And in that way, we know that we'll ensure the sovereignty for multiple family generations to come. So that was why this topic seems so real, present, and right now on my mind. Yeah. So it looks like there's a little bit of technical difficulties. I can't tell who's on or off. I don't know if I'm live or if Kitty's live. But anyway, as we begin this conversation, I'm excited because I know that I've worked with organizations that have 100-year plans. And so I thought about that in the context of all of our families should at least have a 100-year plan. And oftentimes, you don't think about those things. And if you don't think about those things, and if you don't plan for those things, well, one thing you can guarantee is that they will not manifest, because everything begins with first having some level of curiosity. A lot of the folks that I've been speaking with, they hear me use a series, a phrase that says student, teacher, student. And that is the idea that we're a student of certain information, the information that we choose to be ready to learn. And as we learn it, we have the opportunity to move in the role of the teacher, where we can teach what we learn. But it's also important that we still remain a student so that you can learn more and continue to, keep that cycle growing and expanding in a circular manner, where you move along your journey through spaces of being the student, the teacher, and the student. And oftentimes you do it, you can do it simultaneously. In fact, I remember when I started my doctoral studies, I was a student again, and I had been spending years as adjunct faculty for a couple of universities. And so I found myself really enjoying the idea of, while I was teaching other students, challenging myself as a student to gain new insights so that I could give those students real-time information. Okay, there you go. I don't know if I was live or not, but I just decided to keep talking.
Doc, I think that you were live, but for my sake and for our listeners' sake, let's back up about 5 minutes. I'll need you to repeat yourself. I think the problem was on this end,
Okay.
but then again, with Africa, one never knows.
Okay, no worries. Well, I was just sort of given this idea behind what motivated me to really think about this family plan and a 100-year family sovereignty in the context of a 100-year family plan. We've talked about this over the course of my career. I began my career with curiosity. I think I'm my favorite student that I know, because I am so curious and I love to learn. And so as an 18-year young entrepreneur, I remember I won a contract at 18 right out of high school, and that put me in my first legal business. But people would ask me, what was it that made me curious about business? Like, what was going to be, if you will, my thesis at that time? And I shared that I was curious about how organizations that had lasted over 100 years, how that happened, like who those leaders that started or formed that business have passed on, transitioned, yet those
That's right.
organizations were able to continue. These days people look at, Apple, the IBM, all of these companies of the past that continue to exist. They evolve as the times change, and they have to find ways to remain relevant based upon market conditions. But I came to Nairobi in the, quest to meet with the family and to discuss some of their personal objectives. The first draw was to discuss with them some of the business plans that I had and how they might become participants in those plans. And what I realized quickly was that they were interested in those plans, but even beyond those plans, they really needed a family plan. They could have an additional, way of not only addressing their immediate goals and objectives, but how would they sustain investments? How would they evaluate future deal flow? And how would they proceed And so what I said was, hey, I'm going to create a family sovereignty 100-year plan. And no sooner than I made that statement and promise to them, in the process of kind of addressing our immediate business needs, another colleague was introduced to me, and and the person that introduced him sort of, I guess, bragged on me so much that he said, well, since you're offering this solution for that family, I have right now 6 to 10 more families for you, and it's growing every day. So
Mm-hmm.
people work on our piece, but we basically want you to help each of these families with developing their family sovereignty 100-year plan. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it made me think about it. And when you sent the reminder, I said, oh my goodness, what a perfect topic. Let's plant that
Mm-hmm.
seed.
What a perfect topic. It's a very, very powerful topic. Now, there are very many ways that families can build this intergenerational wealth. One of the first of which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do notice that intergenerationally wealthy families educate their children to the highest level they can.
That is the truth. That is where it begins. And it seems to be, and that's another thing that I was curious about that I studied. So when I was in high school, I had a classmate. She wasn't necessarily a friend. I think she was probably a grade or two behind me. But
Mm-hmm.
her father owned a 7-Eleven franchise. And that was big in our community, for
Mm-hmm.
someone to see someone own a franchise. And what I noticed though was they lost the franchise.
Ooh.
And so I paid attention to that. I also paid attention to what I call new wealth. And I noticed that oftentimes, if one family member made the leap and created a business, oftentimes that business would not succeed into the subsequent by generation two, it's already out of business or on its way, hanging on. And so what I noticed is the difference between how other cultures cultivate that knowledge with their kids. When we would go to the local store, and oftentimes that store was owned by a family of a different
Mm-hmm.
ethnic background, and you're in there trying to pay for your food, and you see the little kids in there bagging, doing inventory, standing on a block trying to work the cash register. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I loved that. And then early on, again, like I said, because I've always been curious about having access to resources, because resources are what allow you to execute on your business visions. I read the stories of, the wealthy families,
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. I've looked at the series, the men who've created, America, right? And the stories of their various journeys. And every time I look at it, it's so interesting and exciting and revealing. And then also those families that have remained in existence with the ability to continually perpetuate their wealth, right? One
Mm-hmm.
thing that I noticed about them is that they don't waste their resources.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just give their kids unlimited access to the resources. They make sure that those kids are trained and developed, and they
Mm-hmm.
have age set limits on what they can receive at a certain time. But all
Mm-hmm.
of those resources are meant to be sustainable. So it's not saying that you can't take a chance on a business venture, and if that venture fails or succeeds, executing business plans and whether the business so-called succeeds, that's part of the educational journey. So they
Mm-hmm.
welcome that opportunity to invest so that you can learn. And you oftentimes learn first through failure before you perfect what it takes to operate a successful venture. For some reason, when I look at, sadly, too many of our folks, our community,
Mm-hmm.
we get $5 and we're spending $20
Mm.
to flash, to present, who it is and what it is we have, as opposed to realizing that you must have a reinvestment strategy. You must
Mm-hmm.
develop it if it is you expect for your venture to be sustainable. And why not cultivate that within your family? So
That's right.
that's, kind of the foundation of my thinking, and really the huge passion. When I set out the intention to develop 10 million entrepreneurs and farmers in sustainable organizations over the next decade, that number has now just been expanded again.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what the number is going to be. I was on a call earlier today, and somebody else in my network said, "Oh my God, I have another billionaire. I'm sorry, 100 billionaire,
Hmm.
2 to 300 billionaire, in fact, and he has 20% of his assets allocated towards humanitarian causes. And what you're doing in terms of building out businesses and infrastructure and ecosystems falls hands on in that bucket.
Hmm.
So we want to get you in front of him so that he can throw more money behind what it is that you're doing and developing." And I just said, thank you, Almighty, but thank you, Almighty. And I am not only eager to
Hmm.
help execute on that, but also to really dig deep in the educational process.
Hmm. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful. Now, so the children are to be educated at the highest level in the next generation. But one of the things that we have been seeing is the depletion of that family wealth, because the benefactor, or the alpha dog in the family, for better lack of a quick term, gets sick, and they lose a significant amount of money due to cancer or heart disease, and others in the family are not able to step in that position. Talk to us about how important is health to a family like this.
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because even with this same family that I came to meet with, I was speaking with one of the brothers, and he was sharing that he had been dealing with some concerns, about his health. And what I
Hmm.
said to him is that uh, you must get your health in order, because it
Hmm.
serves no purpose to so-called want to create wealth if you're not here to help
Hmm.
execute on the family's vision and plan. And so I asked him, I said, "So, you know, how old do you think?" At first, I asked him his age, and he
Hmm.
told me that he was 56.
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, how old's the other brother?" He's like, "Oh, he's, 38, 39." And so then I turned to them and I said, "Well, how old do you think I am?" And they said, "Oh, about 43."
Hmm.
And I started laughing, Kitty, because I said, "No, in August, I will celebrate 60 years on this side,
That's right.
of the planet." And they nearly fell out of their seat and said, "Well, what are
Hmm.
you doing?" And I said, I set the intention for my health, because without my health, it doesn't matter how much time I invest in creating wealth. I
Hmm.
won't be healthy enough to sustain it. I won't be healthy enough to finish the next generations of training that are
Hmm.
essential. I've accepted that full life is 120 years and beyond. And so I prayed and set the intention and took responsibility, holding myself accountable for what then would it take if now I'm approaching the midpoint of the first part of that. But I had said that I'm not even at middle point. If I'm going
That's
beyond
right.
120 years, we still have a few more, at least a decade more, before I even get to the midpoint.
That's
So
right.
I'm
Because you
not
have a
middle.
plan. Because you have a plan, and you're talking
Yes,
about
I have to.
planning for wealth, and you're planning for longevity. I do agree.
Yes, yes. And so
So,
somehow or another, we have to get people to embrace that mindset of holding themselves accountable. But I
hmm.
think it becomes first with this idea of setting the intention. I think that's where, for me, when I think about it, I didn't realize how powerful, but I didn't in the moment, but by the time I
Hmm.
was 18, I did. When I had made the declaration as a 9-year-old little girl playing business, when my mom's asking me, like, "What are you thinking?" After I, like I said, getting caught making my fake credit cards. And I told her
Mm.
that I saw myself as an international business tycoon. And
Mm-hmm.
what she did in that was brilliant. She taught me how to set my first vision, because what she said was, baby, tell me more. And at that
Mm-hmm.
moment, again, unbeknownst to my little 9-year-old self, I literally had a vision. I said, Mom, I see myself. I'm in the boardroom. The whole team is paying attention. I'm leading the San Francisco Bay Bridge is out the back window. Like, I had all these details. I'm wearing a navy blue pinstripe suit. Like, and she was just amazed. She was like, yes. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was that permission that she gave me at 9. And even though I don't think I was fully aware of the power in what she did, looking back, no wonder I had a business already at 18.
Mm-hmm.
No, because I had already been given the permission. I didn't think of myself as having any limitations. And so I used to read, we had a set of legal code books in our house. I used to read those books just for fun, reading about corporations when I was 5 and 6 years old, 7 years old. Nobody told me to go read those books. I was just curious. And that curiosity is what has been the foundation of every step along the journey. And I think really a philosophy that I've carried with me is this idea of student, teacher, student. Is you have to keep yourself in that cycle: student, teacher, student.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, we are in that cycle today. We welcome you, our listening audience, to join the conversation. We want to hear from you. If you are out there and you are listening, you are paying attention, this is a very important topic. We'd love to hear from you today. Drop us a note. If you're on Rumble, if you are on YouTube, if you are on our You Now page, we want to hear from you. We're talking about intergenerational wealth and how to create it and create that plan. One of the things we talked about, how education is so very important, maintaining our health is so very important. And that's, of course, a field in which you and I both have extensive investments and developments. But also, we have to talk about real estate. Is real estate important to a 100-year family wealth development plan?
Yes, it is. And in addition to real estate, you must have diversified investments that provide liquidity. Because I see now, situations where families, we're looking at some of the boomers, in fact, some families that I'm advising, having portfolios of real estate, but because they only knew how to buy single family assets, they never developed the next level of how you then leverage those assets into the next level of growth. So if you have a portfolio of 10 homes, that's great. But how do you
Mm-hmm.
leverage that portfolio into multifamily, where instead of
Mm-hmm.
having 10 homes that you're managing, how do you leverage that into hundreds of units that then you
Mm-hmm.
have a professional company able to manage for you, so that you've
Mm-hmm.
gone beyond just creating a job for yourself, and you've begun to create passive income streams for your family, so
Mm-hmm.
that then that wealth creation can continue. And you also have to realize that real estate can build equity. But if you can't tap into that equity, you can find yourself in a situation, which I've lived through this, where I had equity that I preserved in my property, but because I could not release that equity in a favorable fashion, I still was in a situation where ultimately losing a job, then I lost my property.
Mm.
So these periods of experience that I had to gain, I gained them. I gained the knowledge and experience in many instances, firsthand personally. We were looking back and I was saying, dang, all of the properties that I had either acquired or received very early in my career. I did a spreadsheet probably about 6 months ago, a year ago. And when I looked at what I paid for or the value of those properties when I received them and what their market value is now, I would have had a minimum of $10 million in assets just on my small plays, right? And then I could have easily parlayed that into other opportunities. But what I learned early on is that what you needed to qualify for those assets was steady income job, sort of that they defined as a job as an executive rather than being an entrepreneur, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was in each instance, once I had to have the loan verified by my employer, each employer, I lost my job. In both cases, after receiving stellar performance reviews. And so what that was about I turned out to be really brilliant in identifying valued real estate. And every property I purchased with equity. But because other people and the organizations, well, one actually organization was a Black organization, so that was probably the most devastating because they caused
Mm-hmm.
those two properties. And again, after receiving a stellar performance review, the only thing that happened differently was that they had to verify my employment and my salary. And they noticed the zip code of where my property was located and felt that I didn't deserve to live in that particular zip code. And therefore, there was something wrong. So I needed to, I guess, be put in my place, downsized,
Mm.
So, yeah. And sometimes I used to wonder, I'm like, why would somebody do that? Like, why do they care? But people do care. So I vowed that, all right, no worries. You guys got me on the ropes this time. Well, I bet you the next time I acquire personal real estate, one, I'll be my employer. So I won't
Mm-hmm.
need to verify another darn thing for me. And number two, it'll be purchased again, thinking about my family legacy in such a way that no one else will know who the true owners are of those assets. So using blind family trust, legal structures, and all of these different things, and then also having that diversification of other asset classes. The main one that I love that I think a lot of people don't understand is the use of life insurance. Our people don't understand at all why life insurance is a vehicle for wealth. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably more important than the real estate, to be
That's right.
honest,
Well,
because it creates liquidity.
you have now taken us into two areas that I did want to bring up for today. Number one, the legal frameworks in which to contain this wealth that will be forced, that will go forward 100 years.
Absolutely. And so it is by setting up, in some cases, we've heard people talking about setting up their family trust.
Mm-hmm.
I think what might even be superior to that, especially if you are dealing with high net worth individuals, is it seems that in certain jurisdictions, it's you set up the family foundation actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then under the family foundation becomes the trust structure. And then within that becomes the insurance and the other types of structures, and recognizing again the asset class. This is why a family plan is so important, because not every family invests in every asset class, because every asset class offers a different risk profile. And so you want to understand what are the types of risks that your family is willing or able to incur, because you're not going to win on every bet. But if you have a structure, it's okay. Your losses are wins, because that allows you to have a win in another category. That's why you want to
Mm-hmm.
have a diversified strategy.
Mm-hmm. That is very, very true. So you've given us a few different frameworks in which to build this intergenerational wealth, this family legacy, to which we will and must protect that money. So, number one, this should lead to the conversation about insurance, but how does the family protect its wealth as the wealth accumulates and grows over a century?
And that's it. It begins with the family foundation structure,
Mm-hmm.
knowing how that is set up, which jurisdiction is the best. For example, Singapore, Switzerland, Monaco, UAE, all of
Yeah.
these different, St. Lucia, Cayman Islands,
And not
Bahamas.
California.
No, please, not California. you know,
Why? Why
no,
did I
not
insert that? Not California. The
right.
taxes. It's the taxes.
Exactly. That's the other things is families understand again what the tax levels are in the different asset classes where they hold. And so by having certain structures, then you're understanding, okay, this is a taxable asset that might create a capital gains for instance. Well, how do we mitigate that capital gain structure? Well, we hold those assets in a different legal structure that will cause them to not have a capital gains.
Mm-hmm.
We hold those assets in the appropriate jurisdiction that's favorable for those types of assets. And it's the same thing that I do when I'm considering a business. A lot of times people they miss this. Whenever I'm training entrepreneurs about business, I used to always say, listen, if you understand the sector that you're looking to operate in, what I want you to do is I want you to go find 3 companies that are publicly traded, that are part of, the Fortune 500, right? And then I want you to find 3 companies that would be considered like on the Inc. 100. And then I want you to find 3 local companies that maybe would be like on the Los Angeles Business Journal list. And you want to find those 3 companies that are in the sector that you're looking to enter and operate. And I want you to learn everything about those 3 different levels of businesses so that you have an expanded view of how not only the successful organizations compete in that space, it's the same thing with the family office. Let's study some families that have successfully created 100-year plans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You will learn what you study, what you consume.
Mm-hmm. Now, are those families willing to give up that information, or do
They
we have
don't
to
need to
find
be
some
willing
other?
to give up that information. Most of the information is public. You
That's
know who
right.
the top family foundations, there's no secret. They're the
Yeah.
ones out there giving money, family
Mm-hmm.
foundations. You know who they are. You know how to do everything else. You know how to Google, ask Chat GTP to find a list.
Yeah. 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 Good point.
That's a 5 minute less than inquiry.
That's right. That's right. So we've talked about a number of different areas. One area that we haven't talked about, and I believe it's very important, and I believe this is very valuable to you as well, is cultural presentation to gain all of the wealth that will transfer through generations and then lose your core, lose your heart of your culture. To me, that's a terrible tragedy. Am I off base there?
You're not off base, but guess what? That's why we see, sadly, many folks who seemingly, sold their soul to Satan, right? And they seem like
Mm,
they're on that early journey of wealth. We're seeing those people being stripped of the wealth. My why, I'm not in business because I'm trying to make the most money. I'm in business because I'm aiming to offer a value to the most people.
mm-hmm.
And in offering that value, I was listening the other day to Myron Golden. And I think if you hadn't listened to him, you must listen to him. I find him fascinating. I love his messaging. But he was
Mm-hmm.
sharing during one of his Bible studies that how in the beginning, when he was struggling, he focused on King Solomon. He focused on the Bible as a guide for building his not only understanding, but to reposition his focus so that he could build his family kingdom, his family
Mm-hmm.
legacy, his family business. And so he was sharing how, King Solomon's prayer, because many people who find themselves in a situation connected to purpose that seems bigger than they ever imagined, right? How do you navigate that? You see a vision. That 9-year-old little girl saw a vision that at 9 years young, I had no idea how. But how wasn't my assignment. My
Hmm.
assignment was to be obedient and do the part that I could do. And that was to make sure that I had a mindset that said, no matter what experience I take on, I'm going to see it as a learning opportunity. And so then that was why I was in business. Is each time I formed a business, I start with who is it that I'm planning to serve?
Hmm.
And how can I best serve them? And why do I want to serve them? And that's why I remember when I was talking to my son, when I first moved to Vegas, I was coming in 2019 because a fund had put up $3.5 billion
Hmm.
and they were going to have me develop a casino. And I remember when I came, I said, well, I'm not really sure because I thought about it. I had been working back and forth in Vegas since 2005. Now that was 2019. And I was like, I haven't even hung out in a casino. I haven't even put a nickel in a slot machine. So clearly I don't
Hmm.
have much interest. You know what I mean? So I had that. And so I looked at the site where the casino was located, and I said it's in a historically, black neighborhood. And I looked
Right.
around the neighborhood and I said, they need a casino like they need a hole in their heads. What they need
Ow.
is business investment and help, and so I said no. And I remember and I remember I had to pray too because I was like, I just can't. And I left it at, sure, I needed the financial influx in a business. I had been waiting as a developer to develop my own stuff, and this was going to be that opportunity. But I said, there is no way, no how that I want a business that, from my standpoint, harms people. If I can't help
Mm.
people, then it ain't a business that I'm interested in being in. And so thankfully, I turned that down in 2019. And you all know what happened in 2020, COVID,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, that's
everything
right.
was shut down. And the leader of that fund called me probably about 6 months later. And I was in Jamaica at that time and I was in law school. And he said to me, Stephanie, I don't care what you do. I am going to invest in you. And that man has kept his word. But literally, we were just on the phone today, and he's the
Hmm.
one that was bringing the $200 billion CEO to me. And he says, and I have another one that has $350 billion. So, and all of them have humanitarian. So that man, to his word, has been following, and he's like, oh, they love everything that you're doing, your wellness, just everything that you stand for and your community venture plans. And so look at that. At the time, walking away from $3.5 billion seemed like, girl, did you lose your darn mind?
Mm.
But in my spirit, I said, no way, no how. It just can't be my legacy. I'll have to keep on going. I'll
Hmm.
have to wait. And I am so humbled and grateful because I know every day that the work that I'm doing is led by God's intention for my life.
Ashe.
Everything that I stand for is helping and healing people
That's right.
emotionally and economically.
Hmm. Awesome, awesome, awesome. We welcome any commentary from our listeners today. I hope you find this subject to be compelling. We are on with Dr. Steph, and she is showing us the money for the next 100 years. And I encourage
Yes.
each and every one of you to have a plan, have a desire. Let this intergenerational family wealth become that plan. So let's continue. One more area I do want to talk about. And this was related to that statement when you were talking about open up your business around the world, all these different locations. Why I inserted do not start it in California. And this is related to optimize your business for taxes. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Because here's the thing, when you evaluate your business, you must evaluate what are the risks and what are the risk profiles around that particular venture. Because
Hmm.
ultimately, your goal is to be able to produce returns for the stakeholders. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
internal and external stakeholders, and that's also the community benefactors. When you
Mm-hmm.
have a successful, and you and I both discussed the Brookings Institute study that also illustrated why, in particular, Black Americans tend to struggle on the economic side. And that's because disproportionately, as a population in the US, we have more solopreneurs, which again, I'm not discounting the important work that these solopreneurs do, but that should not be your end game. That's where you begin to learn and develop your skill set as an entrepreneur. And that means oftentimes that you begin first by employing yourself. But the
Mm-hmm.
next objective is to employ others. And in order to employ others, you must have a model that creates scalability, a model
Mm-hmm.
that can be fundable, more than just a lifestyle business. And oftentimes we've been encouraged to be educated and to go in professions that will guarantee that you'll just have one generation of wealth. So you're a doctor, you're a lawyer. You can't pass that on to your kids unless it is they become licensed professionals to practice law, to practice medicine, to practice dentistry, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of those businesses are fabulous, but they, in their base context, are jobs. You've employed
Mm-hmm.
yourself. You may employ a few, but what kind of sustainable organizations can you create that will continue to grow and expand and scale so that you employ? I see my company employing thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And even in that, the intention that I have for my employees is that they are being developed to become entrepreneurs within our supply chain. I don't want you sitting on my payroll, twisting your thumbs and not adding value. I create innovation. We're innovation shop. So in our practices, I'm training and grooming new leadership around an intention that you are going to learn how to emulate what excellence in leadership looks like. And what
Mm-hmm.
excellence in leadership looks and feels like is constantly student, teacher, student,
Mm-hmm.
and developing yourself while you are developing others. And so that means you have to transition into the next phase of your evolution as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing that I would add, because my son Sterling,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to be talking to some young people, and I was thinking about, what I would tell them if I would describe, Sterling's journey. When I was pregnant with Sterling, there were two things that were very important to me. One was, once I learned, even I think before I knew the sex of my child, I knew
Mm-hmm.
that I wanted my child to have at least the initials that I had, because I knew that I wanted us to have a family foundation.
That's right.
Okay. That was number one. The second, I knew that I was, I was having a son. Then
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to name him, because I would read all of my financial magazine, my newspapers. I would play my books on tape. Sometimes he would kick me so hard. I used to have the Walkman on my on my belly, playing whatever book or whatever, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you, that kid hit this planet. He was ready, right? And by the time he was 3 weeks old, we were rolling his bassinet into the boardroom as I advised my clients. 3 weeks old in the boardroom. If we weren't in the
Mm-hmm.
boardroom, he was strapped on me as I was giving direction to my clients, right? Fast forward. By the time he was 3 and going to preschool, I would tell him every morning as he came downstairs, he's brushed his teeth or whatever, whatever. And I would say, okay, baby, now this morning, so far, all you've done is spent money on other people's stuff. Now, I want you to
Mm.
go to preschool and think about what you could create, what opportunities you could create. The funny thing is by the time the kid was 4, not quite 5 yet, he was literally a SAG after actor And not because I was out there trying to produce that for him. The mailman would come to the door and he would say, can you wait? Can I do a performance? You know? And so I worked in Beverly Hills at that time, and we could not go out in public on a weekend without people going, that kid is just so, energetic and whatever. But he took into his understanding. I remember he was doing a movie. He was on one of Dave Talbert's movie sets. And the guys were so impressed because every set he entered, he came in ready. He knew his script. If the director wanted to modify his script, he knew how to take direction and modify how he performed. He was ready to go. And that was the attitude that he had inherited. He learned, he watched, he modeled. He was in boardrooms. I took him to billionaire training sessions. And again, people would say, well, you don't bring, my son could go anywhere. He went to fine dining dinners. He went to the places where I was leading multi-billion dollar, he went everywhere I went. And he knew how to dress. He knows how to go and get his custom suit. He was groomed. I never had to talk to my kid about why you don't need to sag. He'd be like, please, I'm not sad. Are you kidding me? Why would I disrespect who I am? I'm used to walking in a room with billionaires. I know how they behave.
Awesome. We are down to our last 10 minutes. And I know towards this powerful conversation, you've kind of let me lead it by, giving you these prompts. But you did bring some things to the table that maybe we haven't talked about yet.
So one of the things that I wanted to make sure is that oftentimes when we have a conversation, it's important for people to say, well, what are the steps? What are the steps? So there's a few steps that I wanted people to think about. The first thing that I want you to do is set an intention. Stop saying that I don't know how. How is not your assignment. Set an intention. And if you set an intention that you're ready now to be the student, then guess what? When the student is ready, the teachers arrive. You're not attracting the information because you never set the intention. That's why you don't know how. But there's people that know how. So set that intention. Start consuming content that is going to help you to understand what that intention is about. Sit there and pray and meditate on what does that mean? Because my son would also, Sterling would tell you that I talked to him from a toddler. I said, baby, all the work that mom is doing, it's not so you can just inherit everything that I have produced and just wowed out, right? Mom is creating a generational legacy. So yes, you will have access to resources, but they're not all yours. They're being allocated in other ways. And if you cut up, you might not get none. You might not get none.
You might not get any.
You might not get any. It's about understanding that you must be responsible because I intend to have a 100-year legacy plan that's active. I hope you participate in it, but so setting that intention, what is your why for your family's legacy? What is it that you imagine? How would you like it to look? How would you like it to operate and function? What are the asset classes that might be of interest? Are you interested in tech? Are you interested in cryptocurrencies? Are you interested in real estate? Are you interested in infrastructure? Are you interested in all of these other opportunities where family wealth is being created and sustained long term? And then what can you begin to learn about those sectors and industries? Because remember, you don't have to be the expert to be able to allocate passive investments. And that's the other thing. Learn business. Learn business. We don't seem to understand how to invest in diamonds in the rough. We tend to invest from the perspective of consumerism. So I want the shiny object. You have the shiny object syndrome. Well, if you're investing in the shiny objects is why you end up losing. Because oftentimes the diamond in the rough, if you don't have an experienced eye you will miss it.
Hmm. And one of the things that I would add to that is in learning to, or learning business, learning to invest, is do not invest in consumerism, but invest in supply and demand.
Yes. Yes. That's why you must know your customers. Who are you planning to serve? Who are you
Hmm.
planning to serve? I saw a clip today. I think it was from LeBron. It was on this motivational talk, and there he was making a statement about people were saying, "Well, why is it that NBA players make so much more than doctors?" And he
Hmm.
said, "It's about how many people you serve. What a doctor may have 30 patients, 40 patients that they can serve, so that's going to set their earning capacity. An NBA player is being exposed to serve millions of people who are consuming the joy of that game. And that is why the compensation is reflective of those millions of people who are being served." And I said that was the perfect, most succinct way to explain this. If you only serve 5 people, then you only have the opportunity to build a structure that is reflective of those 5 folks.
Hmm. Yeah, so very important. I'm taking notes here in the background as fast as I can because
I
you
love
are
it.
on you are on a roll today, Doc. In fact, and maybe we'll talk off the air about this. I think this topic is due for a book. Now, I have just published I think my 60th book, and I said, congratulations. I said I was going to hold off for an extended period of time, but you have fired up in me with this topic. And what I'll do is I'm going to write to you, I'll drop you a note, let you know how it's going. And I'm going to ask you to pen at least a chapter in the book, or to pen the forward to the book. We'll work it out. But the bottom line becomes we need a vehicle that will spring from what you and I have done here with this FIDE program. Obviously, the program means a lot to me. It means a lot to you because just for persisting as long as we had, we've had other shows come and go on LIB radio, but this one has persisted because I truly do believe in it.
I believe in it as well. I mean, I've been so honored to be able to share with the audience that you've already cultivated, and the fact that we're talking about globalization, the fact we're watching with excitement what's happening across the continent of Africa. It is time. And,
Hmm.
the biggest thing that some of our brothers and sisters need is they need that capacity building. They need leaders who are willing to come with a intention to help them educate and develop the capacity. Some of us have been trained at high levels. I know that I'm a highly trained solution provider. And I know
Hmm.
that because my willingness to continue to be a student, I don't have to step up with all the answers, but I know that when I ask in prayer and meditation, an answer will be provided. And then it's about
Hmm.
me acting on that guidance with obedience, with the clear understanding that my goal is to serve people with excellence in
Hmm.
accordance to His Almighty's, desires. That's who I'm seeking approval from. That's
That's
what
right.
my guides my intentions.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We've got just a few more minutes. I have to pull away today to deal with, of course, the people flying in, or actually, they flew in yesterday from London to be with us. We're actually using our home now as a health and wellness retreat. And so that's what they are coming in for. And of course, what I am doing here, you and I have talked about expanding this over an international basis. Is that an area that people should look for to build
Oh,
intergenerational wealth?
absolutely, absolutely. Again, my business plans have been well researched, well studied, and it's why the organization is receiving the type of valuation and
Hmm.
interest. And again, along the journey, folks don't know, but yes, definitely, Zeniverse Wellness Group. is, at the line at, we've got funding commitments, and all that's left is setting up those additional global structures for
Mm-hmm.
those commitments to be received, right? And like I said, every day there's some more, and I think today was the top, $500 billion of folks that, I laughed. I said, yesterday I thought I was at only 100 billion, but 500 billion. So every day that number keeps moving in terms of opportunities. But it's about vibrating at a certain level and having a clear intention around how you serve people.
That's
So
right.
yes, you
Now,
want to play
I,
with us? Yeah,
mm-hmm.
there's an
I had
opportunity. Yeah.
I had cut you off when you were giving this list of things that you wanted to talk about. Is there anything else on your list that we would prioritize toward the same of building this intergenerational wealth?
Start studying wealthy families. If I give you nothing else but to do today, be curious, see who the top wealthy families, who are those foundations? How are they structured? How long have they been in existence? What are some of the causes? Because that's why they have charitable causes. Because when you start sowing good seed into people and infrastructure and
Mm-hmm.
humanity, then guaranteed you will receive access to continual sustainable blessings. Be a blessing, sow a blessing, and you'll reap a harvest of blessings.
Mm-hmm. All right. Be a blessing, sow a blessing. You will reap the harvest of the blessings. Good instruction. Anything else on your list? We don't want to miss any of it.
No, as always, my brother Kitty, just, big hug to you. Thank you so much for, helping me with my different time zone, not forget this space. I didn't want to miss you twice this month.
Mm-hmm.
So happy that, we could make this conversation happen. And yes, every time we can have it, I'm open to having it.
Dynamite, dynamite, dynamite. We will be, if you don't mind, snapping back to our original schedule for next week, which would put you on 2 weeks in a row. I know we skipped a week, but I have believed that your brain collected information that must be shared with our listeners. So, are you on to do this again next week, or should we skip a week?
We need to skip a week because I'm doing the first Internet Innovation Venture Labs Trenchtown
Okay.
Community Venture Plan next week. And so
Okay.
here, and I would love to give a report and update on, we've opened it up so globally entrepreneurs can submit their pitch. So we've got
Mm-hmm.
confirmation that young entrepreneurs in Ghana and about 3 or 4 more countries will be submitting 60-second fast pitches for consideration, but this will be our first one. And so I just realized it as you said it. Yeah, that's next week. So let's skip
Okay.
next week, and then I'll be back with a wonderful update.
Okay. Now, for that submit your pitch, I just did 2 days ago submit a pitch to Ghana, and it was about building the Kujichagulia villages. And so, whatever is happening, don't let your brother be left behind. Please don't.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're actually, it looks like there's a contingent of CEOs who will be traveling to Ghana in mid-July. So I'll keep you updated
Hmm.
on that information as well.
And for other people out there listening that might want to submit a pitch and join this, can they find out more about this at any given website?
I don't have the website. It's Rastafari. I'm sorry, I do. It's Rastafari.tv. Rastafari
www.rastafari.tv.
TV. Yes, yes,
Okay.
Rastafari.tv. And if it is, they need a second thing, they can email me just so that I make sure that I can, direct them appropriately. And that email is DRARDREY at ZenoversewG.com. Dr. Ardrey at ZenoverseWG.com.
Okay. I'm going to repeat that's Dr. DRARDREY, Dr. Audrey at xenoversewg.com.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is beautiful. We're going to wrap it up for right now. Final thoughts that you want to share with our listening audience.
Set the intention and take action.
That's simple instructions. I love it. I'm going to contact you. I'm going to put together an outline for this book. I'm going to contact you and ask you, how much do you want to write? I know you do have a couple of books that you put into the marketplace. This maybe become the most ambitious book that I have done, and I would hope that you have done as well. I think it is a great idea.
I love it. I'm a yes. So let's get it
All
done,
right.
brother. I'm in.
Let's get this party started. Doc, I'm so appreciative to you for today's
Likewise.
program, for
Well,
all
I'm
you do
sending you
for
a
us.
hug back.
Awesome,
I'm
awesome,
sending you a
awesome.
hug back. All
And
right. Be well.
have a great time in Kenya. You know, I have a lot of people in Kenya. So if you want, I can send you some people over there. But I'm betting that your schedule is about as busy as it can be.
It's been, I've been on the grind, so I'm not going to deny that part. But, send me a
Hmm.
couple contacts. If I can connect, I'd love to.
Awesome. I will send them to you, coming at you by the end of today.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so
Be
much, Doc.
well.
We appreciate love you. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. It has been an exciting conversation that we had today with Dr. Stephanie. Please do contact Dr. Stephanie at Dr. Ardrey at xenoversewg.com, and she will get right back to you. Hopefully, you got something to say that will compel her to get right back to you. You've been tuned into your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. And that's going to wrap it up for this week's conversation. We had a great week on LIB Radio, and we plan to have you and us deal with an even better week next week. So tell your friends to tell their friends that we have our own now. And we have the intention, the aim to develop what we have built into something that is truly, truly outstanding. So on that note, I want to thank you all for tuning in to LIB Radio, to LIB TV, and to livinginblack.com, and for tuning in to Show Me the Money with Dr. Steph and your brother. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you on your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. Peace, everybody.